Hi and welcome to week 5 of the 6-week beginner yogi course online. This week I'm introducing you to the yin style of yoga. So the complete opposite of what we did in weeks 3 and 4. Yin, we stay very still and we hold poses for longer periods of time. Now we won't be getting up off the floor for today's practice and also for next week's practice, so it's all floor-based exercises. And I recommend that you have a blanket, cushion and or block. At the very least, have either a blanket or a cushion for support. If you don't have a block, don't worry too much about it, it's just an added extra. So if you don't have your cushion or block, go away and get that now, and then when you're ready, we'll start the practice. We're going to begin an extended child's pose today for our yin practice. So a slightly familiar pose that you might have already encountered in weeks 1 through to 4. So we're going to have the toes together and then widen the space between the knees. So maybe the width of the mat's a good point of reference there. And then we're just going to walk the torso down as we extend the fingers away from the body. Now, if you can, just comfortably resting the forehead down on the mat. But if your head doesn't comfortably touch the mat, feel free to either stack your fists or even use your block or cushion for support if you need to. Most important thing here is that the head is connected to something, either the floor or some kind of support. So go ahead and find your version of extended child's pose. And you can let the elbows be soft here, shoulders relaxed. Let the forehead be really heavy. And as I just give you a quick little intro to the remainder of the class today, go ahead and just begin to incorporate your yogic breathing. So we breathe in and out through the nostrils, nice deep full breaths in and out. Inhaling to the belly. And then letting that breath roll up into the chest, one big breath. Hold briefly. And then slowly exhale as if you were slowly letting air out of a balloon. Inhaling, filling up the belly, rolling the breath up into the chest. And slowly exhaling. Continue with that breath and just actively seeing if you can release tension through the shoulders. We'll be holding our yin postures for about 5 minutes today. So each pose or each side, because sometimes we have to do a right and a left depending on the pose, we'll hold for about 5 minutes. Now if at any stage it becomes too much or you feel like you need to back off a little bit, then just come back into child's pose, or you can come into what I call a rebound, which you'll be shown after this pose. So right now we're most likely beginning to feel our child's pose perhaps in the hips, a slight opening through the hips. And the rest of the poses throughout the remainder of this class are also focusing in on the hip area, most of them anyway. So you should feel a little bit more space in the area of the hips by the end of this class. Nice, deep full breaths in and out. Breathing in and out through the nostrils. We'll pause here in our extended child's pose for 8 more breaths. 8 nice deep full breaths in. 8 slow exhales out. Four more breaths here. Last breath, nice deep full breath in. And exhale. In yin, we move in super slow motion. So in our transitions, particularly into our rebounds, we move very mindfully, slowly. So I'm going to get you to lift yourself up and then just slide onto the belly. Have the hands stacked one on top of the other, elbows wide, and just rest your forehead down. So this is called a rebound pose. And we'll either be rebounding on our tummy, or we might sometimes rebound on our back throughout our yin class. And this pose is simply just to do nothing and just let the effects of the hold that you've just done take place throughout the body. It's often nice to take some nice deep full breaths in and out, particularly around the area of the body that we've just worked with. So in this case, it's the hips, maybe the lower back area. Just allowing the body to be, releasing any tension, breathing deeply. Mindfully make your way up, so just sitting back on the heels or just whatever comfortable seat feels good. And we're going to go straight into some hip work. So I recommend taking your blanket or your cushion and placing it underneath the left knee. We're coming into a tabletop position. This is called dragon lunge in the yin world, and it's quite an intense sensation through the right hip as we do the right side first. So we begin in tabletop position with some support underneath the left knee, and then we're just going to step the right foot through to the front. Now, just pause here for a moment, and then we're going to shimmy the right foot out to the right edge of the mat, so we're opening and giving ourselves some space in that right hip area. Now, I do like to pause here for a moment, especially if this is the first time you're doing dragon lunge, and just check in and see that it's not already feeling too intense in that right hip area. If you feel like you could stay here for 5 minutes, then please just settle in here. If you feel like you could still have a little bit more of intensity added, then you could shuffle the right foot forward and then sink the hips a little lower. Now, just bearing in mind, you do have to stay here for 5 minutes. So if it's already beginning to feel a little bit intense, you could just back off once again. The main rule of thumb here is that the right knee is directly over top of the right ankle. So just check in with that. And that right foot is grounded down into the floor. So once you have your position of the leg feeling pretty good, we're going to I'm just going to give you a couple of different options to do with the hands. Now, If you have sensitive wrists and having the palms flat on the floor directly below the eyes doesn't feel so good, then you can do what I call a gorilla fist. So make fists with your hand and then rest yourself on your knuckles. And this just takes a little bit of pressure out of the wrists. If you have a block, you could adjust the block to whatever height feels good and then rest the hands on top of the block. So just give yourself a little moment or two just to find your version of dragon lunge today. Feel free to wriggle around as much as you need to. And then once you've found your sweet spots, I'm going to invite you to close the eyes. And then I'm going to invite you to stay as still as possible. So in yin, there's this tendency to want to fidget around, especially if we're feeling a little uncomfortable in the pose. And when I say uncomfortable, I don't mean sharp pains, because if you have sharp pains, you might need to back off a little bit. What I mean by uncomfortable is sensations through that right hip, maybe because it's becoming activated, there's space being created there. Maybe becoming fidgety because we're not used to staying still for so long. But just really just seeing if you can catch yourself before you move around, before you fidget, maybe scratching the nose or getting some hair out of your face, or just those little things that we do just to move around because we're not used to the stillness that yin provides. And with the eyes closed, maybe even with the chin melting towards the chest just to release tension out of the head, neck and shoulders. Just observe your reaction to the stillness. And perhaps you bring attention to that right hip area and begin to breathe deeply into that space. How does it feel when you breathe a little deeper? Exhale a little longer. Can you feel the space being created within that right hip area? Pausing here. And just leaving you for a few moments just to observe yourself in dragon lunge. Remembering that at any time you really do need to back off. You can simply just move the right foot backwards a little bit, or you could even come into child's pose. Maybe even just rebound on your belly. Listening to your inner wisdom as you just quietly observe and breathe. We have 8 more breaths here. Four more breaths, staying as still as possible, breathing into any tension, creating space. And then we're going to move in that very slow motion yin way, mindfully into a rebound pose onto our belly. So just carefully sliding that right knee back. And then coming down onto the belly however you need to. Stacking the hands, resting your forehead down. And spend a few moments just taking some nice deep full breaths into the right hand side of the body. Notice the difference between the right side and the left side now. Maybe you notice some tingling, some warm sensations. Maybe just a feeling of more space in the right side. No need to judge or analyze what you notice, just noticing. And then slowly we begin to make our way back up onto hands and knees, so that we can do the left hand side. So go ahead and move the cushion over to the right knee for some support. Stepping the left foot forward when you're ready. And just to let you know as well that we're often very different on our right and left hand side, so it pays just to treat both very individually. So you might have been able to sink a little lower on the right side, but you might feel that the left side feels a little tight, or vice versa. So just kind of judging it in the present moment, shuffling the left foot out to the edge of the mat, and then just pausing here just to notice how you're feeling, how that left hand side, the body's reacting to opening through that left hip area. If you do want to shimmy the foot forward and then sink the hips a little deeper, feel free to. I'm generally not so open in the left hand side, so I tend not to go too far. You want to have the left knee directly over top of the left ankle. And then we're just finding comfortable position for the hands, maybe making those gorilla fists if you need to just give the wrist a little bit of a rest on this side. When you feel ready, when you've found your sweet spot on this side, go ahead and close the eyes over. Committing to staying as still as you can in this pose. Perhaps focusing your energy and your awareness into that left hand side, sending some breaths there. And just noticing the urge here to fidget, to move around, to create a distraction as it is. Notice if you've become distracted, perhaps settle into the breath, deeper inhales, longer exhales. Observing any thoughts that come up, any distractions. And without judging or analyzing, just notice, let go, and then come back to the practice. Come back to observing the breath, or maybe the urge to fidget, just whatever's coming up. We have 8 more breaths here. Nice, deep full breaths in. Long, slow exhales out. And after your next exhale, very mindfully shifting yourself into the rebound pose onto your belly. Take your time, there's no rush to get there. Resting the forehead down. Take some nice deep full breaths into the belly. Feel that whole left hand side fill up with breath as you continue to inhale. And then slowly exhale the breath out. Notice the difference on the left hand side now. You might feel tingling or a warm sensation, or maybe just the feeling of having more space on the left hand side. And just spend a few moments taking an inhale in and just spreading the breath all around the front of the torso, around the back, lower back area, filling the whole hip space. Slow exhales out. Slowly, mindfully make your way back up into a comfortable seat. Our next yin pose is called Sleeping Swan. It's another hip opener, and we'll come into the right hand side first. So I have 2 different options here for you, depending on flexibility through the hips and also whether or not you have sensitive knees, because this can aggravate people with sensitive knees. So I'm going to give you the Sleeping Swan version first on your front, and then I'm going to give you a version on your back for those of you that are most comfortable on your back. So to begin, we come into tabletop. I'm just going to keep my pillow handy just to the side there. And we're going to slide the right knee forward and then see if you can bring the right shin through to the front. So we have the right knee behind the right wrist, and then the left ankle is somewhere behind the left wrist, but the shin doesn't have to be parallel. So the full expression of the pose, maybe one day, maybe not, is to have the shin parallel, but I don't have the shin parallel, so do not panic. So from here, we want to just slide the left leg nice and long, so you can take a little look behind you, make sure you've got a nice long leg. And we want to have the hips even. So at this stage here, while we're still propped up, if you can feel that you're hanging out onto the right hip area, then you need to lift yourself up, and then you might even bring the heel a little bit closer to the top of the left thigh. Now, at this stage, if that's not happening and you still can't get yourself up off that right hip, that's perfectly fine. There is the option to place a block or a cushion or a blanket underneath that right hip just to help prop you up. If you are at a stage here where you're quite comfortable, then you can go ahead and walk yourself down and then just stack hands and rest your forehead on top of stacked hands. If you have a block, you could rest on the block or even on the pillow. So once again, if you're here and you're not dipping over to the right and leaning on that right hip, then you can stay here. If not, then I'm going to give you the option, especially for those with sensitive knees, to come onto your back, bring the soles of the feet to the floor, and then lift the right foot and have the right ankle on the left thigh. And you just let that right knee drop open. From here, if this is feeling okay for you and you can feel that opening through that right hip area, then you can stay here. Otherwise, you can lift the left foot up and then thread your hands onto the back of the thighs, interlace the fingers, and then hang out here for the remainder of the pose. So if you have sensitive knees, this is the best version of this pose that you can do here. Otherwise, you can come onto your front and hang out in Sleeping Swan on your front. So go ahead and have a little play around and decide which version you'd like to do. I'm going to move back into Sleeping Swan, but if you would like to stay on your back, then just stay on your back. So once you've found your version of this pose, whether it's on your front or on your back, go ahead and close the eyes over and tune into the breath. So you might just focus on taking some nice deep full breaths in and out to the belly, slowing the exhale down, maybe even trying to make it twice as long as the inhale. Or you might focus in on that right hip area, sending some breaths into that right hip area, seeing if you can create some space there. And still working on elongating that exhale, staying as still as you can. Every now and again you might notice that you can soften the torso down just a little bit more. Perhaps soften the shoulders. If you notice that you've become distracted by thoughts, maybe sounds, just acknowledge the distraction, let it go, and then gently guide yourself back into just observing the practice, maybe your breath. Doesn't matter how many times you become distracted, just gently bringing yourself back to center. We have 8 more breaths on this side. Nice, deep full breaths in and out. Now, if you are on your front, very mindfully and slowly make your way onto your belly for your rebound. If you are on your back, and just slowly, mindfully, just extend the legs nice and long and just lay flat on the back. Wherever you are, just taking some nice deep full breaths in and out. Perhaps just becoming aware of that right hand side of the body once again. Noticing the tingling, the warmth, maybe the space. Sending some breaths into that area. And begin to slowly, mindfully press yourself back up. And we'll take our sleeping swan on the left hand side. So if you would like to try on your front this time round, if you were on your back in the last round, you're more than welcome to do that. We're often a little bit lopsided from one side to the other. Maybe having your pillow or blanket or block handy. Whenever you're ready, sliding that left knee forward, bringing the shin forward. And then we just want to have the left knee behind the left wrist, and then that left heel might be like mine, actually quite close to the top of the right thigh. Your shin might be a little bit more parallel. It really depends on the flexibility in that hip area. And if this doesn't feel good at all, remember you can come onto your back, bend the knees, and then have the left ankle on the right thigh this time. So you do whatever you need to do, but just a reminder that we don't want to be sinking onto that left hand side. The hips are lifted in sleeping swan pose. We want to keep them as even as possible. So you might need to give yourself a little bit of padding if you can feel yourself dipping over. And then when you're ready, if you're on your front, just gently bring the forearms down first, and then eventually you might bring the whole torso down, maybe rest your forehead on stacked hands. And wherever you find yourself, just closing the eyes over, committing to the stillness and the time that we're spending in our sleeping swan or the variation on your back. Becoming aware of your deep breathing, acknowledging any distractions and just letting them go without judging. Notice where your attention is. Slowly guiding it back into your practice, back to the breath, maybe breathing deeply into that left hand side. Exhaling to create space, to release tension. We have 8 more breaths in this pose. Inhale to breathe deeply into the belly. Roll that same breath up into the chest. Nice deep full breath. Hold briefly. Slowly exhaling out through the nostrils. Lengthening the exhale as much as you can. Last couple of breaths here. And moving very mindfully, either rebounding onto your belly or coming onto your back. If you're already on your back, just extending the legs long wherever you are. Resting the forehead down, maybe turning Resting your cheek down if you like, if you're on your front. Nice deep full breath in. Observing that left hand side as you fill that whole space with your inhale. Go ahead and press yourself up into a comfortable seat. Have the legs extended out nice and long. And I recommend sitting on top of your cushion or folded blanket for this next pose. So we'll give the hips a little bit of a break now. And come into a yin style forward fold, otherwise known as caterpillar pose. So we're going to have the legs extended out nice and long, and we want to have a little bit of height underneath us so that the pelvis stays tilting forward, so that we're not rounding through the lower back area. So find some support under the sit bones. Most people will need this. And then if it's not comfortable to have the legs straight in caterpillar pose, you can have the knees a little bit bent if that means that you can kind of sit up a little bit taller. In fact, you could even take your blanket, if you have one handy, and kind of roll it into a kind of log form and place that under the knees for a little bit of support as well. So there's lots of different options. If you had a bolster, you could also place the bolster underneath the knees as well. So go ahead and sit up nice and tall to begin with. And I'm just going to have the hands down alongside us. Take a nice deep full breath in. And as you exhale, just kind of walk the hands down alongside the legs. So we want to bring the tummy towards the thighs first as opposed to the chest caving in. So at this stage, the chest is still facing out towards the toes. Toes are pointing upwards. And just hang out here for a few beats. And then we're going to take an inhale, extend, lift the chest. And as you exhale, round through the upper back, bring the chin to the chest. And then just let the torso be heavy. Let the hands just rest comfortably beside the legs or the feet, wherever they are. You might even like to turn the palms to face up, and you'll feel the shoulders just relax a little bit more here. And we're just going to pause here for the next few moments, eyes closed. Just tuning into the breath, observing what's happening. Notice any distractions that have come up.
Acknowledging, letting go, coming back to the breath. Maybe feeling the torso get a little bit heavier. You might breathe a little deeper into the backs of the legs if this is where you're feeling the stretch the most. Perhaps you might breathe into the lower back and offer a little space up in there. We have 8 more breaths here. Last couple of breaths. Nice deep full breath in and out. And then just moving very mindfully, slowly coming back up. And this time we'll check our rebound on our back. So just slowly making your way onto your back. Legs extended nice and long. Arms down alongside you, palms facing upwards, eyes closed, just breathing. Notice the tingling or the warmth moving down the length of the legs now. Maybe through the lower back area. Slowly slide the feet up onto the mat, bend the knees. We're going to do a spinal twist or a yin style twist here. So feet are hip width apart. Your arms are just down alongside you for now. If you have the room, you could bring the arms out nice and wide. That can feel quite nice. Or if having the arms wide doesn't feel as good, you could always do cactus arms as well. But we can find a nice comfortable position for the arms once we've brought the knees down. So go ahead and draw a nice deep full breath in. And as you exhale, we're just slowly and gently letting the knees just drop over to the right. And once they've comfortably landed, then just change positions of the arms as you need to. You could keep the gaze looking up, or if you like, you could turn the head and look out over the left shoulder. Closing the eyes here. breathing deeply. Noticing any distractions. Just acknowledging, letting go, and guiding yourself back into the breath. We have 8 more breaths here. Last breath in and out. Nice deep full breath in. Exhale fully. And slowly begin to bring the knees back to center. Let the soles of the feet come back down onto the mat. Just align for a moment. And then when you're ready, nice deep full breath in. Exhale as the knees slowly and gently drop over to the left. You can turn your gaze to look out over the right shoulder if you wish. Find comfortable placement for the arms. Maybe make some adjustments if it feels different on this side. And then just settle into the pose, taking nice deep full breaths in and out. Staying as present as you can. Staying as still as you can. Resisting the urge to fidget. But instead, just become comfortable with being uncomfortable sometimes. Remember, being uncomfortable doesn't mean sharp pains or anything like that. You're allowed to adjust if you feel a level of pain that really is feeling like it's not in your best interest, then please feel free to move. But otherwise, just laying, giving your body the time it needs to just enjoy the extended hold of a yin pose. Tuning back into the breath. Anytime you notice you've become distracted, without judging the distraction or yourself, just letting it go and just floating the awareness back to the breath, back to the present. Pausing here for 8 more breaths. Nice deep full breaths into the belly, rolling the breath up into the chest. Hold briefly. Slow exhale through the nostrils, as if you were slowly letting air out of a balloon. And moving in super slow motion, bring the knees back to center. Bring the soles of the feet back to the floor. Just take a moment to realign. If you like, you could bring your arms back down alongside you and just pause here for a few moments with the knees bent. Slowly turn over onto your side, doesn't matter whether it's right or left, and then press yourself up into a comfortable seat so that I can bring you into our last yin pose before we rest in Shavasana. So we're going to do reclining butterfly, so our last little hip opening pose for this class. And I recommend that if you have a blanket, to use the blanket as part of the pose. So go ahead and open the blanket out, so maybe so it's still folded in half, and then fold it in half so long ways it's nice and long, and then fold it in half again. If it's an extra long blanket, then you might even go ahead and fold it again. So we're just looking for a little bit of support here, and go ahead and bring the top of the blanket in line with the top of your mat. And then we're just going to bring the tailbone in line with the end of the blanket. Bring the soles of the feet together. Let the knees drop open. And then we're just going to gently lay back against the blanket. Might need to reposition a little bit so that the head is nice and comfortable. And then you can choose where you bring the arms, might be down alongside you, maybe a little bit away from the body, palms facing upwards. You might bring one hand to your belly, the other hand to your heart, if that feels comfortable. Or you might even bring the arms up overhead and take opposite hands to opposite elbows. Have a little play around, see what feels good. Neck is nice and long, chin is slightly tucked, eyes and mouth are closed. And we're just pausing here in our reclining butterfly, breathing deeply. Perhaps sending some inhales into the hip area, helping to create space there. As we exhale, just actively releasing tension. And for any time as we hold butterfly that it becomes too intense or just doesn't feel good on the hips anymore, just bring the knees back up and bring the soles of the feet to the mat and just rest for a few moments. You can come back to butterfly, or you can just simply just leave the knees bent. No problem. Notice if you can soften the shoulders and maybe even across the chest. Notice if you're holding tension across the chest area. Nice deep full breath in. Exhale to soften. Relax your jaw. Get space between the eyebrows. You have 8 more breaths here. Cultivating that nice, deep, full breath in and out. Or moving very slowly, and maybe even using your hands to just gently encourage the knees to lift back up. Bring the soles of the feet to the floor and just pause here. Let everything realign. And then we're just going to slide the legs down into our last rebound and also our relaxation pose, our Shavasana. So let the feet be about the width of the mat apart, arms are a little bit away from the body, palms facing up. Lifting the chest gently, flattening the shoulder blades down, eyes and mouth stay closed. Take a nice deep full breath in, exhale fully, softening all the heavy parts of the body, back of the head, the shoulders, the hips, the heels. As you exhale, softening, relaxing the spine, the chest, the stomach, the fingers and the toes, the features of the face soften and relax, muscles around the eyes and the mouth. Your breath becomes natural and calm, allowing yourself to just float away into your relaxation. Begin to deepen your breath once again. Nice deep full breaths in and out. Gently begin to wiggle through the fingers, the toes, maybe turn the head from side to side if you like. Zipping the legs together slowly, reaching the arms up overhead, taking a full body stretch. And drawing the knees up, and just slowly turning over onto your side, resting your head on your underarm. Just pausing here for a moment. And pressing yourself up into a comfortable seat. Feel free to sit on top of a block or folded blanket cushion if you like. Roll the shoulders. Sit up nice and tall. Bring your hands into heart center and just lightly pressing the thumbs against the chest. Bringing your chin down to your chest, giving yourself a smile for your practice. A smile for trying something new. And bringing your thumbs to your forehead. Namaste. Well done.